Weapons are obviously the most important feature of Destiny 2, especially exotic weapons. So that's why in today's video, let's cover the top 10 exotic weapons that you should buy as a solo player from the Monument to Lost Lights exotic archive in the tower. Unfortunately, because these exotics on this list are so easily accessible through the exotic archive, to buy these weapons they can actually set you back quite a lot of materials. Just to buy one exotic, it's going to cost you roughly 100,000 glimmer, 1 or 2 ascendant shards, and also an exotic cipher. So if you're buying any exotics through the archive, make sure you choose correctly. In no particular order, let's get this list started with number 1, the Quicksilver Storm. Now the Quicksilver Storm is arguably the best auto rifle in the entire game to use if you want to use an auto rifle. With its exotic catalyst turning the primary fire into strand damage, it makes it very good to use with all of your strand builds. Another great feature to using an auto rifle in Destiny 2, every season with the seasonal artifact, there is always some sort of artifact in there that works well with auto rifles. For this season specifically, we have overload auto rifles, meaning every time you use an auto rifle, you're going to stun overloads. So not only does the Quicksilver Storm do decent strand primary weapon damage, it also has the ability to load up to 3 grenade launchers that do massive special weapon damage. So for me, the Quicksilver Storm is a great special / primary hybrid weapon that I recommend every Guardian tries and gets. Coming in at number 2, we have the Grand Overture machine gun. Now this machine gun is completely busted. It does an insane amount of damage for just no reason. Now if you didn't know, every single time that a new raid comes out in Destiny 2 and we have the day 1 raid race where everyone competes to finish the raid first, the Grand Overture is always banned. Every single year across all platforms that you can play Destiny 2 on, the Grand Overture is disabled and you can never equip it. Now you're probably thinking, why? Well, it's because the Grand Overture does an absolute ridiculous amount of damage. So having 6 Guardians with this on in day 1 of a raid will just shred every single boss. However, every other day of the year, you can use the Grand Overture to shred every boss in any activity that you want. This thing does some serious damage, and if you don't have one and you want to shred bosses, pick up the Grand Overture ASAP. Moving on to number 3, we have the best grenade launcher in the game, the Wither Horde. Now everyone knows what the Wither Horde does. You stick the boss with the projectile and then it does damage over time. As long as you have the catalyst for the Wither Horde, you can put this gun away when it's not reloaded and it's going to auto load for you. You can pull out a heavy weapon and do more damage. Once the dot effect has run out, you pull the Wither Horde back out and you stick the boss. It's a very simple rotation that increases your damage as a team by a lot. So as a group or a support player, I would definitely recommend that you try and get a Wither Horde to do some extra DPS to the boss. Trust me, it all adds up at the end when you're trying to DPS for a time limit. Coming in at number 4, we have a weapon for all of you PvP players that enjoy some Crucible. That is the Thorn. Now the Thorn has just recently received a catalyst that has made this weapon one of the best weapons to use inside of Crucible. With this new catalyst, it gets a huge range buff and also a stability buff, making this a wonderful weapon to use inside of PvE if you like using hand cannons. There's not much else to say here about the Thorn. It is just an overall solid gun to use in PvP. So if you haven't got it yet, or if you haven't got the catalyst, make sure to pick it up and try and get the catalyst and give it a go. Moving on to number 5, we have my favorite exotic in the entire game, the Isagi's Burden. Now the Isagi's Burden is another great weapon that all solo players should have to do massive damage to bosses. This is one of the best weapons to add into a DPS rotation that is both simple and very effective. One of the best solo damage rotations that a solo player can do is open with an Isagi's Burden, switch to a rocket launcher and unload rockets, and then switch back to the Isagi's Burden. With these 2 guns alone, you can do some massive damage as a solo player to all bosses in the game. It must be noted that the Isagi's Burden is pretty much useless unless you are taking advantage of the 4 times honed edge. If you're not using that, then don't use the Isagi's at all. Coming in at number 6, I have chosen the Leonar Bow, which is amazing for Void solo play. If you're a Void hunter and you love using Void weapons, you will love trying out the Leonar. Playing as a Void solo hunter and using the Gyro Falcon's exotic chest piece, pairing this with the Leonar is just absolutely absurd. If you didn't know, with this bow, it actually applies a poison effect to the enemies, which will spread. If you pair this with volatile rounds, the Lemonarch is just absolutely broken. On top of this broken build already, the Lemonarch also has intrinsic overload, making it a great weapon to stun for champions. Just look at the gameplay you can see, look at all these void explosions and all the poison ticking down. This weapon is seriously fun, and I definitely recommend you try and get it. As for number 7, I have chosen the Whisper of the Worm. Now I've only chosen this weapon because of the flat 15% damage buff that the snipers got this season in Season of the Wish. Yes, that's right, snipers got a flat 15% damage boost on legendaries and also exotics. Now the best sniper that you can use to do massive damage to bosses is obviously the Whisper of the Worm. With its exotic perk White Nail, landing 3 precision shots will refill the magazine, meaning you can shoot indefinitely as long as you have both ammo and you don't miss a headshot. If I had to summarize Destiny 2 into 2 exotic weapons, one of them would be the Whisper of the Worm and the other one would probably be the Gjallarhorn. Everyone knows what the Whisper of the Worm is, and I assume pretty much everyone watching this video already has the Whisper of the Worm. And if you do, trust me, give it a go this season. With the damage boost, it actually does really good damage. Moving over to number 8, I have chosen the Legend of Acrius shotgun. Now over the past couple years, we have had a new addition of many dungeons and other bosses in the game that seem to be very oppressing. These bosses get all up in your grill and you need to be in their face to do damage. As time goes on, it seems to be that we are seeing less and less bosses that sort of sit far away and you DPS as a group. These new bosses are all up in your face and they try and melee you. And the best weapons to do damage to these bosses are obviously gonna be shotguns. Now the Legend of Acrius is actually a bit of a funny weapon. This weapon is pretty much useless unless you have the exotic catalyst for the gun. So until you get the catalyst, this weapon is pretty much useless and don't bother using it. Now what the catalyst does is it actually gives this shotgun Trench Barrel, and this Trench Barrel perks makes this weapon do infinitely more damage, and you need to have Trench Barrel on it to make sure it actually is effective. But once you've got Trench Barrel on this gun, this weapon does some serious damage, and I definitely recommend you guys give it a go. The rotation for this gun is super simple. All you have to do is melee an enemy once, and it's going to give you 3 shots in the gun that do increased damage. You want to then shoot those 3 shots, and then melee the boss again to get 3 more shots that do increased damage, and just continue this cycle over and over again. Coming in at number 9, I have chosen the Outbreak Perfected. Now in your general play-to-play time in Destiny 2, you will probably never use the Outbreak Perfected. But where this gun is especially good is in boss DPS phases where you have absolutely no ammo left and you need to do damage to a boss. Now I haven't done any damage testing for these primary weapons for myself, but in the past previous years, the Outbreak Perfected is the best primary weapon to do the best and most damage that you possibly can to all the bosses in the game. Now because the Outbreak Perfected is obviously a primary fire weapon, it doesn't run out of ammo. So when you run out of heavy and special, you pull this gun out to finish up your DPS phases and obviously finish the boss out when you have no ammo. All of this weapon's damage actually comes from its intrinsic trait, the Corruption Spreads. Basically what this does is when you chain rapid hit headshots, it spawns little Sieva nodes that do extra damage to the boss. These little Sieva nodes actually do some ridiculous damage, and if you have a full party of Outbreak Perfected, this weapon is completely broken. Now finally, last but not least, we're going to wrap this list up with the Leviathans Breath. Now like I've said in the past, any sort of exotic weapon that has a built-in intrinsic stunning capability like Overload or Unstoppable, it makes that weapon infinitely better than all the other weapons in that category. And obviously, lucky for the Leviathan's Breath, it has built-in stunning Unstoppable Champion capabilities. Now all the Leviathan's Breath does is it basically shoots a huge void bolt that just does ridiculous amounts of damage, and it also stuns Unstoppables. So it is great to pull into GMs where there is Unstoppables, because you can pretty much just 2-shot these Unstoppable champions. If you have the catalyst for the Leviathan's Breath, it makes it so that when you chain rapid headshots, it gives the weapon rapid fire, meaning that you can unload shots a lot faster. Unfortunately for me, I've been too lazy and I haven't finished this catalyst off yet, but trust me, if you get the catalyst, it makes this weapon 10 times better. Also, if you play Destiny 2 on PC, there is actually a frame rate glitch with the Leviathan's Breath. If you uncap your frame limit, the Leviathan's Breath actually does more damage than what it should be doing on PC than what it does on both consoles. I don't know why this is a thing, but it actually does almost double the amount of damage on PC. But anyway, Guardians, that will wrap the top 10 list up there. Now, I understand there are so many exotic weapons in the game, and I can only choose 10 for this video. Every exotic has its perfect capability in its certain situations, but these 10 exotics that I've recommended are great for solo players, and they work all the time. Drop a comment down below in the comments of your favorite exotic in Destiny 2, and I'll see if I can make a part 2 to this video. But anyway, Guardians, thank you so much for watching. If you did make it this far in the video, feel free to drop a like, subscribe, and comment, and all that other good stuff. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later.